Hello and welcome to the Oceangate Expeditions update. My name is Aaron. I am the CEO and founder of SubBrief. I am a 20-year submarine veteran from the United States Navy Submarine Force and a subject matter expert in submarines. I'm here to give you my opinion on what happened with this Titan tragedy today. So the Oceangate Expedition is a manned submarine transport company that leverages college graduate engineers with off-the-shelf technology for cost-effective subsea research. On Sunday, June 18th, 2023, Oceangate suffered loss of communication with their Titan submarine, a deep-diving Cyclops-class. Titan was designed to take up to 5 people to the Titanic wreck site and other deep-water locations. As the Titan descended with its crew of 5 to the Titanic wreck, an hour and 40 minutes into the dive, communication with the submersible was lost. This is about the same time that she was scheduled to drop ballast and touch bottom at near the 2-hour mark. So those may be connected. We're not sure yet. Loss of communication with the vessel below 3,000 meters is not uncommon. It's a non-zero chance of happening as it happened during testing. So it was not unexpected. So as the hours passed on June 18th, 2023, communication was not reestablished during the 10-hour dive. After approximately 12 hours, the topside support team on the ship Polar Prince contacted the U.S. Coast Guard at 9:13 p.m. to report loss of contact with their vessel. That's a summary of what happened. So in this video, I'm going to describe to you vessel construction, the systems that they have on board, the concerns that I have about the design, about its experimental build. And first, a disclaimer from Oceangate's Expedition. Listen to this.
An experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign?
Where do I sign, right? So Oceangate Expedition waiver explains just how experimental this design is. It's not registered or certified by any agency or the Coast Guard, like some of their other submarines actually are. This one is not. This is like an experimental plane, but it's a submarine in this case. And it spells out the dangers in writing for everybody on board, and that you may die if you ride on board this submersible. It says it right there in the waiver. So let's talk about the data sheet that they have. This is from the Oceangate website. The Titan is a 21,000 pound, 22-foot long, electrically driven submarine for 5 people. The test depth is calculated to be 4,000 meters. And this is kind of key because right now this is just the naval architect engineering calculating the strength of the pressure vessel without an actual dynamic test at sea at this point for 4,000 meters. It is built of 5 inches of carbon fiber with a titanium hatch glued on the bow and a steel or titanium dome on the aft. It has 96 hours of life support, which is very vague. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Sensors and systems on board are built and produced by Teledyne BlueView. They have the 2D sonar and the Doppler velocity INS, which is inertial navigation system that is upgraded with the ultra-short baseline, which means it's very accurate at calculating motion while submerged. And this system, I know, is very good. I have no questions about the Teledyne equipment. It's probably the best thing on this thing that actually works. All right, so here's the pressure hull under construction. As you can see, it's just a carbon fiber weave that is just loomed left and right until it becomes 5 inches thick. It's a carbon fiber wrap that's designed to withstand the pressures of 4,000 meters of sea depth. Here is a video of it being, of the titanium hatch rings being installed on one of the ends. Watch this. That's the adhesive right there. Think of it like a very thick glue. It's going to bond the titanium ring that you see there onto the carbon fiber pressure hull. And they only get one chance to do this because once it's on, that bonding agent adheres. And it's not coming back off again after this. So they very carefully line it up, and it looks like they got it right. So good job getting the hatch rings on. This is going to go on both sides, the forward bow and the aft section. Here's what the aft section looks like. The aft section simply an aft dome that is placed on that titanium ring. On the front, there is an access hatch that we'll show you here in a second. But now I want you to watch this short interview that the CEO of Oceangate, Mr. Stockton Rush, had with Teledyne Marine representatives. Teledyne Marine are making the sonar systems and inertial navigation systems for this vessel. But listen to what he talks about. The CEO talks about hiring people.
Yes, I mean, when I started the business, one of the things you'll find, there are other sub-operators out there, but they typically have gentlemen who are ex-military submariners, and you'll see a whole bunch of 50-year-old white guys. I wanted our team to be younger, to be inspirational, and I'm not going to inspire a 16-year-old to go pursue marine technology. But a 25-year-old, who's a sub-pilot or a platform operator, or one of our techs, can be inspirational. And so we've really tried to get very intelligent, motivated, younger individuals involved, because we're doing things that are completely new. We're taking approaches that are used largely in the aerospace industry, is related to safety and some of the preponderance of checklists, things we do for risk assessments and things like that are more aviation related than ocean related. And we can train people to do that. We can train someone to pilot the sub. We use a game controller, so anybody can drive the sub.
All right, so Stockton Rush, the CEO of Oceangate Expeditions, avoided hiring submarine veterans because we're 50-year-old white men, like myself, and would not inspire young people. And that's a valid reason. I wouldn't expect, say, the young teenage generation to look up to me and be like, I want to be like that guy. I kind of get that. But also, you don't want to just only hire young college graduates that you would then train to inspire the next generation. You have to have subject matter experts at some point in the chain. And I'm not talking about the vice admiral that's on the board of directors. We're not even going to talk about him. He's a retired Coast Guard admiral, served, honorably, no problems there. But you don't seem to have a subject matter expert that's from the submarine community that could maybe talk about some of the problems that we're going to go over today. Just some things that I've seen just from your promotional videos on your site. The team included technicians that threw a hammer in college was his qualification, besides being a college graduate. Another college graduate was a surfer. He hired him on because he enjoyed his surfing stories, I guess. I don't know. But the idea was to train these young college graduates in operating the submarine with a game controller. And let's take a look at this game controller. It's a PlayStation 3 wireless controller. I really don't have a problem with it being a PlayStation controller. It could be any kind of controller that they want. I really have a problem with it being wireless. You don't want to control your submarine with a wireless connection. Like, what happens if the batteries die? Do you have an extra set? Do you always put fresh batteries in on every dive? Did you bring extra batteries? Is there a USB port where in a pinch you could plug the controller into whatever system you have there and actually control, or does it have to maintain a Bluetooth connection? Did you bring a spare? And does that spare sync properly if the primary controller doesn't work? Like, are these things that they thought about? I hope so. We don't know. They've only shown this one. All right, so let's talk about access. This is the bow or the front of the Titan. And the only way in and out of the submarine is through this forward hatch that is held on by 17 bolts. There is no other egress. There's no other way out of the submarine other than through this 17 bolted hatch. And there's no way to open it from the inside. You can't undo the bolts from the inside or swing the hatch open. You are completely dependent on the surface support vessel topside whenever you get in this thing, that they're going to let you back out before your 96 hours of air runs out. So he talks about taking examples and learning lessons from the aviation community. Well, one of the worst non-flight disasters in NASA history was from the Apollo 1, where 3 astronauts lost their lives doing a systems check on the launch pad while they were bolted into their capsule. There was a fire that started in there. They were alive when the fire started. They reported it to the control center, said, "Get us out of here, get us out of here. There's a fire." And before they could get the bolts off, the astronauts had passed away. This is a very important lesson learned that apparently Stockton didn't learn from, or at least forgot, because he's locking people into this submarine with no way for them to quickly get out themselves in the case of a casualty. So let's talk about life support. The datasheet claims that it has 96 hours of life support for 5 people. My question is, how was this tested? Did they put 5 people in this submarine while it was ashore, sealed them in there with 17 bolts, and waited even 24 hours to see how good the air quality was after 1 day, much less 4 days? Was that test ever done? We don't know. There's no information on that. There's simply a claim on the website that they have 96 hours of life support. Where is the atmosphere monitoring system? In all these photos, I don't see any air pitons or sensors anywhere. And in all the displays that I see from their public website, there's no indication of oxygen levels and other, toxic gas levels like CO2, carbon monoxide, all these things that could generate. You need to be aware of those levels. And if they are aware, it's just not available on any of their photos. Did they just keep pumping oxygen into the capsule while it was underway so they could keep the CO2 and oxygen level in a proper ratio? Well, there's a lot of other gases involved with that you have to manage as well. So they need to keep track of that stuff. If they were just adding oxygen to the environment, well, that creates a high oxygen environment. What happens when you're locked inside a capsule in a high oxygen environment and you're operating electronics? Well, you burn up in your Apollo capsule like an astronaut. That's another possibility of what happened here. We just need to know more about this life support system. This was a custom build, so there is no other standard to go off of. We just have their claim of 96 hours on their website and the video and photos that they have made public on their website. The only evidence of a deep submergence test that we have with the Titan, this specific submarine, is when Stockton Rush, the CEO, took it down to just over 3,000 meters by himself solo in about a 10-hour trip. This does not verify the atmosphere system will support 5 people. Okay, certainly not for 96 hours because he wasn't even down there that long. Okay, it also, and more importantly, does not support that the test depth of this vessel is actually 4,000 meters because he just went down below 3,000 meters, but not to 4,000. So the test depth has been verified at some point between those two depths, and the Titanic is very close to 4,000 meters. It's just shy of that, actually. The test depth right now is just mathematically calculated by a naval architect engineer that I'm sure did the math right, but it's still just theoretical until you actually dive to that depth. And then you stay there for a fixed period of time. This is one of many tests that they needed to do. Now, let's talk about emergency air breathing. What if there's toxic gas in your capsule and you can't get out? How do you breathe if there's smoke billowing out of a piece of equipment or something? So do they have emergency air breathing gas mask, or mask rather, with positive airflow, positive air going into the mask, keeping all the toxic fumes out of the mask itself? Is there a way to ventilate the capsule if it's full of smoke? From what I've seen, absolutely not. The only way you're going to ventilate it is to go to the surface, take off the 17 bolts, open that hatch, and wave the smoke out. Well, that is not going to help you if you're submerged and you're trying to drive the submarine to the surface. If you can't see your displays or even outside the port, how are you going to know which way you're driving with your little PlayStation 3 controller? This is why you hire a submarine expert to bring these things up and then resolve them and then test them. It would have saved lives. So let's get back to our story. So it is June 18th. It's day 3 of an 8-day trip. We're on board the Polar Prince. Polar Prince is a deep sea support vessel, and it's over the Titanic wreck site. The Titan submarine is on board. It's on board its launch sled that you can see here. And I will say this patented launch sled is very cleverly designed and seems to work very well. So they did a great job with the sled, getting this thing on board ships. One of the nice things about this sled is it allows them to operate in higher sea states than if they were just going off the back of a deep sea ocean vessel. Because they don't need an A crane, they can just slide the sled into the seas, and then they submerge the sled, as we'll see here in a second. Here is another photo of that sled, presumably during testing, because it looks like it was near Everett, Washington, whenever they took this photo. But this is what that sled looks like. Here is it submerged. They submerge it down to 30 feet, where it is then stabilized, and the seas can be pretty rough 30 feet at the surface, and down here they'll be very calm. And from this platform, this is where they dock and launch the submerged vessel, the Titan. Okay, so the Titan swims away under its own electrical power. This is on June 18th of 2023, using its 4 motors, and begins its descent down to the Titanic wreck. People on board, we now have the names of all 5 people. We have Stockton Rush, the CEO of Oceangate, probably acting as tour guide, I imagine. We have PH, who is a French explorer, also Titanic expert, very well-respected gentleman who presumably would be the pilot and, of course, tour guide for the guest on board. The guests on board are 3 businessmen. Mr. Dawood and his son, tragically, is with him. And another gentleman, Hamish Harding, is the 3rd guest. Total of 5 people on board going down to see the Titanic. And sadly, they have not been heard from at the time of this recording. So at about 1 hour and 40 minutes into the dive, they lose communication with the surface vessel. That data link that they have that is giving position of and depth of the submarine is finally lost. But that is not unexpected because they saw that loss in testing as well. Whenever the CEO went down on a solo dive, they had lost communication. So this was not, unheard of, which I think delayed the call for assistance from topside. They expected contact to be reestablished probably during ascent some 8 to 10 hours later. And unfortunately, contact was never reestablished. And then some 12 hours later, at about 9:13 p.m. is when they called the American Coast Guard for a loss of communication with their vessel. So I made a short list of just some of the things I see wrong with this design. I'm sure this list will grow and we'll know more once the investigation is complete. On the submarine, first, they used a carbon fiber pressure hull. That is great to a point. It's lightweight, it's very strong, but it's not perfect. These things are not made out of magic. And everybody that's worked with carbon fiber in the past knows that it does not crack, it shatters like a porcelain plate. So whenever it does fail, it fails quickly and unexpectedly. And because the test depth of 4,000 meters was never actually tested before they brought guests on board, this is one possibility, is that the carbon fiber pressure hull shattered for whatever reason, maybe a defect in the construction. You could speculate all you want about that, but that's one possibility. Also, he hires young, inexperienced technicians. That alone is not a problem. I support that. It's a great idea, especially with inspiring the next generation. But with your young, inexperienced technicians, you have to hire subject matter experts in submarine operations and safety. You have to have that. And a lot of these concerns could have been addressed before you brought guests on board or you took anyone down and lost them at sea, as what appears to have happened here. It did not use lessons learned from NASA and the aviation community, as he stated he did in that interview, because he's locking people in a cylinder, in a capsule, if you will, with no way to get out, with oxygen being fed into it, and possibly a high oxygen environment resulting in a fire. Okay. And once there's a fire, there isn't any way to breathe. There's no emergency air breathing that I'm aware of. There's no pictures of it. There's no mention of it in the stat sheet, data sheet. So the test depth, like I said, was not verified. The atmosphere life support system, there's not enough details on that to really make a judgment. I would love to know more as to how they monitored life support and how they scrubbed the CO2 and other toxins like hydrogen and carbon monoxide. All that stuff takes equipment to do that. And if they're just dumping oxygen into this environment, by the time an hour and 40 minutes went by, they would have a high oxygen environment, just like Apollo 1. All right. There's no way to ventilate, that I'm aware of, the pressure hull. So once it does have a toxic gas or smoke, there's no way to get rid of it other than to surface and open the hatch. That's ridiculous and unsafe. There's no emergency air breathing for the people on board. There's no voice communications with topside, because Stockton Rush, in his interview with Teledyne, said that he was tired of being interrupted from topside with update requests, which is why he chose to go with the data acoustic modem that would transmit the position and depth of the submarine continuously so that he could enjoy his submarine ride. So the Titan began its descent with 5 souls on board. Contact was lost after an hour and 40 minutes. and contact was never reestablished. And I really feel terrible for all the families involved because your family members are dead. And it hurts me to say that, but it's the truth. And I hope this video helps give you some closure, helping you know what probably happened. We'll know more in the coming days. I'll probably do a follow-up to this, but I hope this video helps you process what's happened this past week. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.